All right, let's dive right into this explainer on BlackRock, based on the claims from our source, Megalomedia. We're going to break down how this financial titan, according to them, went from a truly devastating failure to positioning itself right at the very heart of the global economy. You know, the story really starts with this just mind-boggling number, $68 trillion. That's the estimated amount of money needed to build and maintain all of the world's infrastructure between now and 2040. It is a pot of money so big it could literally reshape the planet. So, to really get a handle on BlackRock's alleged game plan here, you first have to understand the man who built this entire empire from scratch, Larry Fink. His personal journey is absolutely central to this whole story.
Now, you might think his path to power started with some genius move or a string of incredible successes. Well, according to our source, it was the exact opposite. It was forged in the fire of one single catastrophic mistake.
The source paints this picture of Fink as the classic Wall Street whiz kid, right? He joins a top-tier bank, just shoots up the ranks at record speed, and even helps invent a financial product that changes the game. But then, in 1986, one bad bet on interest rates goes horribly wrong, costing his firm $100 million and almost tanking his entire career.
And that revolutionary product? It was the mortgage-backed security. Our source uses this fantastic analogy for it, a financial casserole. You take a whole bunch of different home loans, you mix them together, bake them into one single product, and then you slice it up and sell it to investors. The whole point was to spread out the risk. But, as we all found out in 2008, if the ingredients you're using are bad, well, the whole casserole ends up being toxic.
You can just feel the sting in that quote. This wasn't just some number on a spreadsheet for him, it was a deep, personal failure. According to the source, this one moment ignited an obsession in Larry Fink that would define everything he did from that point on. An absolute, relentless drive to master risk.
So after getting pushed out of First Boston, Fink didn't just fade away. No, he channeled that obsession into building a completely new kind of company, one designed from the ground up, specifically to stop that kind of failure from ever happening again. Our source argues that BlackRock was built on a totally different idea from all its rivals. While every other firm was out there chasing these huge, risky paydays, Fink's sales pitch was the complete opposite. It was, "We will protect you from losing everything." It was a company literally founded on the memory of that $100 million mistake.
And this was the engine behind that promise. A secret weapon called Aladdin. Look, this thing wasn't just some piece of software. It was designed to be the central nervous system of their whole operation. It could stress test your money against almost any scenario you could think of. What if there's a war? What if the housing market implodes? Aladdin was built to find the answers before the questions became a problem.
And the sheer scale of Aladdin's reach just became unbelievable. By 2020, it wasn't just for BlackRock anymore. They were licensing it out to their competitors, to central banks, to governments, reportedly monitoring about 10% of all financial assets on the entire planet. Think about that. So Fink's obsession with risk, his machine, Aladdin, it was all about to be put to the ultimate test. The 2008 financial crisis, a total catastrophe for the world, would become BlackRock's greatest moment, the thing that launched it into a whole new stratosphere of power.
The contrast our source lays out is just so stark. The very mortgage-backed securities that Fink helped pioneer came back to haunt Wall Street. While the big banks that loaded up on them were either collapsing or begging for bailouts, BlackRock had seen the risk and stayed away. They weren't just safe, they were the ones the U.S. government called in to help manage the cleanup.
And if you need just one detail to understand how essential Fink and BlackRock had become, get this. At the absolute peak of the panic, the U.S. Treasury Secretary was reportedly calling him nonstop. The guy who was once an outcast on Wall Street was now the person the government trusted to navigate the world's biggest financial meltdown.
Okay, so now they're armed with immense financial power and deep, deep political connections. According to our source, BlackRock then set its sights on a brand new frontier, a move that the source calls an attempt to control the very bloodlines of the global system.
For a time, that frontier was ESG investing, pushing companies to focus on environmental, social, and governance issues. With this really famous quote,
Fink positioned BlackRock as something more than just an investor. He was saying they were a force for moral change in the business world.
But that ESG push created a massive political backlash. And according to the source, when the pressure really started to mount, BlackRock quietly did a complete 180. Their support for key environmental and social shareholder proposals just plummeted, from backing almost half of them in 2020 down to almost none just 4 years later. This quote from the late tycoon Sam Zell really captured how a lot of critics were feeling. The source claims that people from all over the political map saw this ESG push as a hypocritical power grab, an attempt to dictate policy without having any kind of democratic vote.
With the whole ESG experiment fading, Fink needed a new engine for growth. And he found it, according to the source, in infrastructure. He pivoted from the abstract world of financial products to the concrete, steel, and fiber optics that our world actually runs on.
Our source calls these assets natural monopolies, and for a really simple reason. Just think about it. You can't just go build a competing airport right next to an existing one. You can't choose a different water utility. Whoever owns these things has a built-in customer base that can't go anywhere else.
And this all leads to what the source describes as a deeply unsettling cycle. Through their giant index funds, BlackRock is one of the biggest shareholders in the defense companies that make weapons for conflict. Then, when the fighting is over, BlackRock positions itself just like it has in Ukraine to manage the incredibly lucrative job of rebuilding everything. And that brings us to the final, really provocative question our source leaves us with. By moving from financial markets into the actual physical world of infrastructure and reconstruction, has BlackRock created a structure where, whether we're in a time of peace or a time of conflict, it is positioned to win? The source leaves us to think about the implications of a single company having that much power over the very framework of our world.